Dear organizers and dear colleagues, my name is Lars Ramskold. I am from Stockholm in Sweden. I will present a lead seal of Constantine the Great with the Chi-Rho and Sol indicating that the Chi-Rho originated as Constantine's victory sign. This is a collaboration with Mr. Wolfram Tillack from Munich in Germany. The Romans used lead seals for many purposes. One was to seal bags with money or other valuables. Some bags belonging to imperial administration were sealed with seals showing the emperor. The mosaic shows some bags with money, prize money. Lead seals have been found in many places all over the Roman Empire. Several thousand lead seals have been found in the area around the Imperial Palace in Trier, in Germany. The seal described here was found in Germany, perhaps in Trier, but we don't know the find spot. Here we see some reconstructions of money bags where the seals have been used to seal the strings around the bag. A new lead seal has been discovered, showing on the obverse side the emperor with the laureate helmet and the legend AUGN, meaning Augustus Noster. This is the other side, the reverse, where we see Sol, sun god, is nude with a radiant crown. He has the chlamys over his shoulder and he's holding a globe. The legend is Comity AUGN. The seal is about 2 centimeters across. Behind the bust with the helmet, we see a Chi-Rho. In Christian symbolism, the Chi-Rho or the Christogram is formed by the Chi and Rho, the two first letters in Christos or Christ. And here we see the Chi-Rho behind the bust. Between the years 310 and 318 AD, Sol, the sun god, dominated the coinage of Constantine I. The image of Sol on the lead seal is the standard depiction. We see Sol holding the globe, raising his hand, and this is a coin from Constantine I showing the same depiction. The legends, Comity, AUGN on the lead seal, and Soli Invicti Comity on the coin are variations of the same message. Sol is the emperor's companion. Both sides of the seal carry the legend AUGN, Augustus Noster. So who is this Augustus? The emperor is not named, but the identity of AUGN can be inferred. The Chi-Rho excludes all emperors before and contemporary with Constantine I, and the figure of Sol on the reverse excludes all emperors after Constantine I. So our conclusion is that the emperor shown on the obverse can only be Constantine I. This conclusion is supported by the features of the face, the helmet, the bust, and all of which are typical for Constantine. The date of the seal can be inferred from the presence of both Sol and the Chi-Rho. We know that Sol was chosen by Constantine in 310 AD as his Comus, his divine companion. And also we know that the Chi-Rho was introduced by Constantine in 312. The laureate helmet was introduced by Constantine in about 315. Later, the dominance of Sol in the coinage ended in 318 with only sporadic later occurrences. These dates indicate that the seal may have been produced between 315 and 318 AD. So where was it produced? Well, the find spot of the seal is unknown, but is possibly Trier. The place of production, however, may have been anywhere in the empire. The seal is clearly imperial, meaning that it was used by the imperial administration. If it was used by the court, which is possible but far from certain, it would have been produced at the location of the court, which was usually also the location of the emperor. The style of the obverse bust has some parallels in the coinage, especially with that of Tichenum, the minting city just south of Milan. Constantine resided in Milan in late 315 and early 316. During this day, he issued large amounts of gold donatives and coins and medallions, and the famous Tichenum medallion may also date from this day. Perhaps the lead seal was produced in Tichenum during this period, and we see here the similarity of Constantine's bust on the lead seal with that on a coin minted in Tichenor. The significance of this, well, the legend comedy next to Sol indicates that the sun god is the companion, the comus, to Eugene, that is to our emperor Constantine I. That is, on one side of the seal, the emperor is accompanied by Chi-Rho and the other by Sol. The ancient sources like Tacitus and Eusebius, who were Christians and contemporary with Constantine, describe how Constantine experienced visions during the campaign against Maxentius in 312 AD, in which the heavenly sign appeared. Constantine was promised victory through the sign, and indeed he won over Maxentius and gained control over Rome and later over the whole empire. And much due to these written accounts, it has been claimed for 1300 years that Constantine became a Christian already in 312 AD. But there is some apparent contradiction seen in this seal. The Chi-Rho and the sun god are figured on the same seal. So if the Chi-Rho is a Christian sign, and if Constantine used it as a Christian sign, how can the sun god be explained? There is no final answer to this question, but many facts suggest that Constantine's conversion to Christianity was a more complex change than how it has been portrayed traditionally. A panegyric delivered to Constantine late in year 310 describes a vision of the sun god, also known then as Apollo, that Constantine experienced early that year. The vision is nowadays thought to have been a solar halo, but to Constantine it must have been a profound experience, because the coinage shows clearly that Constantine chose Sol as his companion, as his comus, in 310 AD. Here we see several examples of coins and medallions where Constantine is accompanied by Sol. Sol dominates Constantine's coinage between 310 and 319 AD, and Sol continues to be figured on coins until 325. We can see how Constantine and Sol are figured on the obverse of this large medallion, on this smaller gold coin. On the reverse, we see Sol Comity Eugene, Sol is the companion of Augustus. This is a bronze coin again showing Sol, and here we have Sol in his quadriga, being crowned by victory, the same as we see here on the shield that Constantine is carrying. 3 years after the Cairo sign promised Constantine victory over Maxentius, Constantine came back to Rome to celebrate his Decimalia, his 10-year anniversary, and to inaugurate the triumphal arch erected in his honor by the Roman Senate. The location is next to the Colosseum, 120 meters south of Nero's Sol statue known as the Colossus, which was later lending its name to the Flavian amphitheater nearby. Here is a medallion of another Roman Emperor Gordian, where we see the Colossus of Nero, the Sol statue, and we see the Colosseum next to it. And here is the fountain in Metasudans. And here is the reconstruction of Nero's colossal statue. The Arch of Constantine was carefully positioned at the end of the Via Triumphalis, aligned with the statue of Sol. Approaching the arch along the Via Triumphalis, one would see Sol centered in the monument's middle arch. Coming closer, here we see Sol in the middle of the arch. The arch itself has several references to Sol that the viewer would see coming closer. On the east facade, there's a large tondo, circular relief with Sol in his quadriga. Opposite Constantine, at least in one of the 4 pairs of busts in the niches in the lateral passageways, Sol is figured. And here we see Constantine himself raising his arm in the same way as Sol, which also is seen in the scene of the siege of Verona, where the emperor is shown with the sun god's identifying gesture of raising his right hand. So Christian scholars have tried to find references to Christianity on the arch, but the closest is the cryptic reference in the inscription to Instinctu Divinitatis, seen here. However, as pointed out by Elizabeth Marlowe, Ian Ferris and others, most Romans at the time would have understood Instinctus Divinitatis as a reference not to Christ, but to Sol. Later, more than 10 years later, Constantine built his new city Constantinopolis, where he erected a column with a statue of himself as Sol on top. The statue was described by ancient authors, and the Tabula Peutingeriana shows it, and here we see the column with the statue of Constantine on top. It fell down in 1106. These are reconstructions based on the ancient accounts saying that Constantine was figured with a rays from his head, the rays of the sun god. Like many Roman emperors before him, Constantine portrayed himself in the guise of his favorite god. And here we see some statues showing Constantine as Sol. This is a fairly large one, 0.5 meter, which is in Copenhagen. This is a smaller one, which is in Cologne in Germany. So what about the Chi-Rho? Well, all reports of a Chi-Rho relating to Christ or to Constantine dating before Constantine's victory of Maxentius, which was on the 28th of October 312, can be rejected. This was published in a paper by me last year. The earliest verifiable occurrences of the Chi-Rho are on 2 milestones found in northern Algeria. And the inscriptions show that they must date from between the battle where Constantine won against Maxentius on the 28th of October 312 and 30th of April 313. And during this 6-month interval, these inscriptions, these milestones were produced, and we see on top of each of them a large Chi-Rho. The next occurrence may be on the famous so-called Tichenor medallion, a silver donative, possibly from 315, but it could be as late as from 321, as argued by Noah Lenski a few years ago. Only 2 other early instances of Chi-Rho on coins are known, from Siscia and Trier. And here we see the medallion with the Chi-Rho on the front of the helmet. This is a coin from Siscia with the Chi-Rho on the side of the helmet, and this is a coin from Trier where the Chi-Rho is on the shield. These dies were probably engraved by local engravers that took their own personal initiatives, but they do show an awareness of the new symbol. The context is military with no apparent religious message. Finally, we must include the most well-known occurrence, that on the Spes public coins of Constantinople, dating from 327 to 328. The reverse shows a Chi-Rho over the labarum, the banner which Constantine adopted on a campaign against Maxentius in 312. The message is about victory over an enemy, probably Licinius, with no obvious religious connotation. Again, the Chi-Rho is used as a symbol of victory, as Constantine's personal victory sign. The Chi-Rho does occur in a Christian context, but there are very few instances from the reign of Constantine where the Chi-Rho does appear in a Christian context. The earliest securely dated inscription where a Chi-Rho is used as an apparent Christian sign is thought to be the one on a tombstone found on the floor of the Constantinian Basilica do San Lorenzo fuori le Mura in Rome. The inscription is dated to year 323 AD through the mention of the consuls of that year, Severus and Rufinus. An inscription ends with a Chi-Rho, and the context must mean that it is a Christian symbol. This tombstone shows that Christians read the Chi-Rho as a sign for Christ no later than a decade after the inception of the sign. Perhaps Constantine also read it that way in private, although officially he promoted it as a victory sign. This ambiguity is characteristic for Constantine's relation to Christianity. Conclusions. We conclude that the lead seal described in this study shows Constantine the Great. He is accompanied by 2 aides for military victory. One is the sun god Sol, his comes, and the other is his personal victory sign, the Chi-Rho. The lead seal is unique in showing Constantine together with both Sol and the Chi-Rho at the same time. It almost certainly dates from 312 to 318 AD, possibly from 316. The seal shows that Constantine, at the time when the seal was produced, hoped to be victorious through both Sol and the Chi-Rho. From its introduction in 312 AD and throughout Constantine's reign, the Chi-Rho was used primarily as a personal victory sign for the emperor. But if he also saw it as a Christian sign from the beginning, we may never know. Regardless of the original meaning and context of the Chi-Rho sign, it soon took on a Christian symbolic meaning to Christian, a meaning it still has today. Thank you.